There's a quiet moment that keeps repeating. You wake up. You know what you should do today. Not everything. Just that one thing. And somehow, the day passes without it happening. No crisis. No collapse. Just a subtle drift away. By nightfall, the familiar thought appears. Why am I like this? Why can't I just do it? And eventually, I must be lazy. But that word lazy is one of the most damaging misunderstandings in modern psychology. Because laziness, as we imagine it, doesn't actually exist in the human brain. Most of us learned the idea of laziness very young. Before we understood motivation. Before we understood emotions. Before we had language for inner states. If you didn't act, it meant you didn't care. If you delayed, it meant you lacked discipline. If you struggled, it meant something was wrong with you. But psychology tells a different story. In neuroscience, behavior always has a reason. The brain does nothing randomly. It does nothing for no reason. And it does nothing without some perceived benefit. Even self-sabotage. Even avoidance. Even freezing in place. Visual, abstract brain animation slowly forming. When people say lazy, they usually mean this. You could act but you choose not to. But this definition doesn't hold up under scientific scrutiny. Because the brain doesn't choose effortlessness over meaning. It chooses safety over threat. And that distinction changes everything. Your brain is not designed to make you successful. It's not designed to make you fulfilled. Or productive. Or self-actualized. Those are modern ideas. Your brain evolved to do one thing extremely well. Keep you alive and socially intact. That means avoiding physical danger. Avoiding social rejection. Avoiding emotional overwhelm. Anything that threatens those feels dangerous. Even if it's logically beneficial. This is where the myth of laziness begins to fall apart. Visual, early human silhouettes around a fire. Here's a critical psychological truth. For the brain, failure is not just an outcome. It's an experience. And experiences leave emotional memory. When effort once led to embarrassment, criticism, disappointment, withdrawal of affection, the brain learns something. Not consciously, not verbally, but somatically. It learned. Effort leads to pain. So now, when you approach a task that resembles that past experience, your nervous system reacts before you think. Muscles tighten. Attention scatters. Motivation drops. Not because you're lazy, but because your body remembers. In behavioral psychology, avoidance is one of the strongest learning mechanisms. Hear how it works. 1. You approach something that feels emotionally risky. 2. Your body produces discomfort. 3. You step away. 4. The discomfort decreases. That relief is powerful. It teaches the brain. Avoidance works. This is called negative reinforcement. Not because it's bad, but because something unpleasant was removed. Every time you avoid, your brain gets rewarded. Over time, avoidance becomes automatic. And from the outside, it looks like laziness. Visual loop animation slowly cycling. Willpower lives in the prefrontal cortex. That's the planning, reasoning, goal-setting part of the brain. But emotional threat is processed deeper. In the amygdala and limbic system. When these systems disagree, the deeper one wins. Every time. That's why you can want to act. You can know what to do. You can plan perfectly. And still feel unable to move. You're not lacking willpower. You're facing a threat signal. Calling yourself lazy doesn't motivate change. It creates shame. And shame has a specific psychological effect. Shame narrows attention. It reduces cognitive flexibility. It increases avoidance behavior. In other words, the more you shame yourself for not acting, the harder it becomes to act. This is why cycles feel endless. There's a concept in psychology called learned helplessness. It happens when effort repeatedly fails to change outcomes. The brain stops trying not because it can't, but because it learned that trying doesn't help. This was first observed in animals. Then in humans. People in learned helplessness don't look distressed. They look unmotivated. Flat. Passive. Still, but internally the system is shut down. Not broken. Protective. Here's something counterintuitive. The more intelligent, sensitive, or self-aware you are, the more vulnerable you are to emotional avoidance. Why? Because you can imagine outcomes vividly. You can simulate future failure. You can feel anticipated shame before it happens. Your brain runs simulations. And if the simulation hurts enough, the body refuses to engage. This is not weakness. It's a high-powered prediction system misfiring. Your brain is constantly predicting. It predicts how something will feel, what it will cost, whether it's worth it. If the predicted emotional cost outweighs the reward, action shuts down. This is called effective forecasting, and humans are notoriously bad at it. We overestimate pain. We underestimate resilience. So the brain chooses an action. Here, why just rest doesn't solve this. This isn't physical exhaustion. It's emotional load. You can sleep 8 hours and still feel unable to start. Because rest restores energy, not emotional safety. Avoidance isn't about energy depletion. It's about threat perception. Trying carries risk. Risk of discovering limits, confronting uncertainty, realizing you care. Sometimes avoidance protects you from disappointment. Sometimes it protects you from hope. Because hope makes loss possible. There's a difference between I don't want to do this and I don't feel safe doing this. The second one rarely sounds dramatic. It sounds like I'll do it later. I need to prepare more. I'm not in the right mood. These are rationalizations layered over fear. Not conscious fear. Embodied fear. Most advice assumes you lack structure. You lack discipline. You lack motivation. So it adds pressure. Schedules. Rules. Consequences. But pressure increases threat. And threat increases avoidance. This is why productivity content works briefly, then collapses. You can't out-discipline a nervous system. The question is, why can't I do this? It's, what does my brain think will happen if I do? That question changes the entire conversation. Because now, instead of fighting yourself, you're listening. Many avoidance patterns start early. When effort was criticized, mistakes were punished, emotions were dismissed. The brain learned visibility is dangerous. So now tasks that make you visible, even to yourself, trigger withdrawal. One of the biggest myths is that avoidance is a thought problem. It's not. The body reacts first. Thoughts come later. By the time you say, I don't feel like it, your nervous system has already decided. This is why logic alone never works. So let's redefine laziness properly. Laziness is what avoidance looks like when you ignore the nervous system. That's it. No moral failure. No character flaw. Just a protective response misunderstood. If laziness isn't real in the way we were taught, then force isn't the solution. Understanding is. And this series isn't about pushing harder.